Sure. Let me take you through the Linux file system and its directories in a simple way, comparing it to Windows when needed. Imagine your computer's storage as a huge filing cabinet. In Windows, you can usually see it in a system called File Explorer, with folders like Documents, Downloads, etc. Linux does something similar, but its structure is a bit different, and everything starts from a single point called the root. In Linux, the root is the base of the entire file system. It's represented by a single /. Everything you see in a Linux file system is part of this structure. It's like the top folder in your C drive in Windows, except there's no C drive in Linux. Now, let's look at the important directories inside the root directories. bin binary. This is where Linux keeps essential programs or commands that are needed to run the system, like etc. Think of it like the System32 folder in Windows, where essential executable files live. Home. This is where the personal files of each user are stored. Every user on the system has a folder here, or inside these folders, users store their documents, pictures, and other personal files. It's like the users folder in Windows, where you have your documents, downloads, and other personal folders. The etc. directory is where you'll find configuration files that control how the system behaves. For example, things like network settings, user account settings, and system-wide settings are stored here. You can think of it like the control panel settings or program data in Windows, where system-wide settings are stored. The dev directory contains files that represent devices attached to the system, like hard drives, printers, or USB devices. For example, your hard drive might be listed as. In Windows, these devices would be listed as C, D, or other drive letters, but in Linux they are part of this special directory. The proc directory contains information about the system and its running processes. If you want to know details about the CPU, memory, or running applications, you can find it here. This is a unique feature of Linux, and there's no direct equivalent in Windows. And inil var variable files. Here, data that changes during system operation is stored, like log files, emails, or data used by applications. For example, your system logs are stored in. In Windows, logs are stored in places like the event viewer, but in Linux they are inside TMP, temporary files. This directory is used for temporary files that are needed only for a short time and can be safely deleted after. For example, files created by a program while it's running. In Windows, this is like the temporary folder located at and restored it to lib, libraries. This directory contains shared libraries or files that programs need to run. These libraries are like building blocks for applications to use when they are executed. In Windows, shared libraries are often stored as DLL files. User programs. This folder contains read-only data for user programs. It includes applications and software that are installed on the system, along with their library. In Windows, this is similar to the program files folder, where installed applications are stored. Optional software. This directory is for optional software that is not part of the core operating system. Software installed here is usually big applications or packages that are not distributed with the system by default. Windows doesn't have a direct equivalent, but third-party applications are typically installed in directories like MNT and media mount points. These are where external devices like USB drives, DVDs, or network drives are mounted. It's typically used for temporary mounts and is used for things like USB drives. In Windows, when you insert a USB, it usually appears as a new drive letter like E or F. In Windows, you have partitions like CO, DO, and etc., where each partition is a separate drive. In Linux, it's a little different. Linux uses a single file system, but it can mount separate partitions or drives into various directories. For example, you might have your system files on one partition and your personal files on another. This is why Linux has mount points like or earg, where additional drives or partitions are attached into the file system. In simpler terms, Windows has multiple drives, C, D, etc. Linux uses one root file system, urshtut, but can mount other drives or partitions inside directories like or. In Linux, everything is part of the root file system starting from, and it has various directories like usudpo and others to organize files based on their role, while Windows organizes files in drives and folders like C and program files. Linux handles it with a unified file system under the root directory. So, in summary, Linux file system is more organized around one main root directory. It uses directories like to store specific types of files, much like Windows has C, program files, and users. Partitions in Linux are mounted to directories instead of showing up as separate drive letters like in Windows.